All right, guys, what I'm going to do here, it's 11:37 as I sent out a couple of emails and I told folks, I know some of you on the Podcast Warrior docket, we want to hear from you first. Everybody here in my view of the world, as we talked about last week in episode one, or the first part of Lessons from the Zombie Apocalypse, is that I've learned a lot of things over the last year, and I looked at the 31 episodes or listened to the 31 episodes of Warrior versus Zombie podcast, and many of the podcast warriors that were part of that are on here today. And I tell you, coming out of the apocalypse. And by the way, I'm going to mute everybody here just so that I don't get a lot of background noise. I am recording this right by now, and I will take those. But I'm really, really impressed with not necessarily my part of those podcasts, but I really were impressed with the lessons and the things and just the warrior spirit that was in every one of those interviews. And it really, last week, if you didn't happen to listen to the recording from last week, I hit on some of the high points, and I'm not going to do that again. But what we talked about is, even as we're moving forward out of the zombie apocalypse, that's my word for the pandemic, the thing we all are recognizing is that we're still in what's called a VUCA environment. It's very volatile, it's uncertain, there's constant complexity and ambiguity in a lot of cases. Even in the pre-discussion here, there was some things about the vaccine, the viruses, the shutdown, all kinds of things, right? So one of the things what I wanted to do today was, and I sent you guys an expectation, you're not going to have to do a full the podcast warriors, but I'm going to be asking you basically to give us three pieces of data. One is the question, what is the most important lesson? And I know we've all learned a lot of lessons in this last year, but what is the most important lesson you learned or was reinforced? So if you said something that you thought was particularly brilliant during the podcast and you want to reiterate that, that's totally fine. Then, one of the things, sorry, hold on.
Hello.
Somebody's will supposed to come in on mute, but anyway, sorry. And so we'll be going through all of those, and then what are you most grateful for? We spent a lot of time thinking about all of the lament or the things that didn't happen over the last year, and I think it would be beneficial for those who are either online here or that will listen to the recording afterwards to hear the things that the warriors on this Zoom are grateful for. I think it's important to always have gratitude, even in the tough times. And I know some of you have reinforced that even in your podcast. And then, really, what are you doing differently today, or what things have you initiated during the zombie apocalypse to take advantage or to really maybe storm forward as opposed to mourning over what has changed? So, anyway, so that's that one.
Hello.
I'm sorry. Okay, so here we go. All right, so I'm going to do this. All I know is Randy got on early, and
Hello.
he actually asked me to.
Hello.
Sorry, we're getting somebody here that's. Danya Shah.
Hello.
We can hear you. If you can, I'm gonna if you can't stay muted, I'm gonna have to remove you. Sorry, but anyway, all right. So what we're gonna do right now is I'm going to, if any one of the warriors podcast warriors, and you know who you are. You know, I have Susan, Shannon, Reinhardt, Scott, Mark, Jason, and Randy are all on here right now, and we'll have some others that have said they can't join until between the 12 and 1 time frame, or even 12:30 to 1. So I want to get you guys on the board. So if I'm going to ask just whoever that wants to start can just go ahead and open your mic and answer those questions. So who likes to go first? Randy didn't want to go first, so um, who would like to offer up their response? Susan Kirsch. Okay, way to go, Susan.
Okay, so I'm unmuted. Well, I mean, first, David, thank you for reconvening these sessions. It's been really fun to look to see how much you've grown. I was number 12, I see, when I looked over the list, and just had a great time thinking about and then doing the interview. And so it's also really great to just see a whole bunch of other warriors on this call. So that's fun. And also, I wanted to go early just because I will not be able to stay on the call for a long time, but I did want to join and participate to just in support for what you're doing. And I can tell you a little bit. I mean, you'll understand maybe when I tell you a little bit about what my answers to your questions are. You know, my domain these days is working in the political arena. I'm in California. California has been just, communities have been getting beaten up by legislators trying to take away local control and impose greater power for developers to take over our land and our buildings and our decision making. So that's been kind of the playground that I've been playing in. I mean, I'm retired, so I get to play in any playground I want to. And I would say the thing that's pleased me the most that might be relevant for other people is just coming to understand and to be thinking about how imagination, I mean, I can say how my imagination, but I think this is really true for all of us, how imagination being up like at the top chakra, for anybody who's into that, is what connects us to the brilliance of the divine mind. And just that kind of sort of setting ego aside to be able to be open to what we imagine could happen and what we could do, and understanding that is our link to the brilliance of the divine mind. So that's one of my favorite ways of thinking these days. It's even new since we talked, David. And that has played out in just such an amazing way for me. Within a 3-week period, really, this started March 1st, and I want to tell you a little bit about what that concept, my imagination and the brilliance of the divine mind. In that time period, we have created a name for an organization called catalystsca.org. It's barely populated with anything yet, but it's called catalystsca.org for California. We've come up with the name, a logo, a website. We convened a town hall meeting about 2 of the worst of the bills in California, Senate Bill 9 and 10. I recruited 2 speakers to make a presentation. I recruited endorsers, and we had 20 endorsers for this town hall meeting. They were invited to make a 30-second or a 1-minute video, and 10 of them did make videos. We had a town hall meeting that we got word out. We had 204 people who registered and 142, I think, who showed up. And so now today, like that was on Wednesday. So in that short period, honoring imagination, I mean, and obviously a whole lot of work that's given me the connections and network to do the other pieces of this, but we've pulled that off. And now I've got a dozen questions and things that are follow-up to go with that, but it's really quite amazing.
Well,
And
I'm sorry. That's fascinating, Susan, and it's exactly what I was expecting. Not exactly the specifics, by the way, but just after each of you, but for sure when I was talking to you, I knew that things weren't remaining going to remain static as we move forward from this. So that's beautiful.
and I would say one of the things that I'm most grateful for, I mean, there's all kinds of things, you know, in the personal realm, but just knowing that this event is happening and knowing what we were able to do, you know, in this 3-week period, I'm really grateful for Zoom. I mean, what an amazing technology to be bringing forward and all of the ways in which we can reach people, not in person. We wish we could shake hands or hugs or whatever, but just how amazing it is that we can see each other and get a sense of dynamics. And so I'm really grateful for Zoom.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Susan. I appreciate you
Yeah.
jumping in first.
Thank
Uh,
you for giving me that opportunity. And I'm sorry I will miss the other stories because I'm certain you've
okay.
got
Well,
a lot.
it's going to be recorded, so I'll be posting that. So you'll definitely hear that'll be on the YouTube channel as well as in our on Facebook and other places. So yeah, it'll be out there. Lon, did you want to go next?
Sure, sure. Because I a little bit of I want to go off what Susan said at the beginning. She mentioned how watching your podcasts has changed and improved in things. And one of the things that I've noticed, and I think we're preaching to the choir here with this group, but hopefully maybe some people will listen and learn, is what I've seen is that the people that didn't sit back and go, okay, things have changed. I'm going to wait until everything gets back to normal and then go. Those people are still at ground zero. Whereas people like you that have continued to do and found new ways if you needed to, I think you used to go into a studio and things like that. That's one of the big things that I saw was the people that weren't afraid to continue doing what they're doing, given what was going on around them, have are now 3 times around the track while everybody else is still waiting to start. I've seen that in the businesses here locally. The other thing is the other thing you're doing, and that is you're helping others. You're not out here going, I'm doing this for myself. You're saying, how can I help other people to get through this apocalypse? How can we help people? I'm seeing businesses that early on were going, what can we do to support the community? How can we help the community? How can we all work together and rally together? And now as we're coming out of it, those businesses are now really growing because everybody's looking to them and going, they were there when times were bad. We want to support them now. And the businesses that sat back and were going, woe is me, I need to close my doors or whatever. And I get that, not everybody had that option to stay open, but the people that were interested in serving others during the tough times are now getting that back tenfold. I'm hearing from a lot of business owners here that are saying, the community has just, the outpouring is amazing. The only reason I'm still open, the only reason I can still pay my employees is because of the community. And the community's going, the only reason we're supporting them is because they were doing everything they could do to support us. So it's that, don't sit back and wait till everything changes, and focus on helping others. So those are the things that you're exemplifying and that I've seen a lot of this past year and loving it.
That's awesome, Lon. Hey, I'm going to ask Shannon, since you managed to change your name since the last time I saw you, that I know that's a major accomplishment in the pandemic or in the zombie apocalypse. I watch The Walking Dead, and when people get married and have babies in the zombie apocalypse, it's always kind of a fascinating story. But I know you can't stay on too long, so I wanted to get to you. Can you share with us what's been going on in your world and the answers
Absolutely.
to the questions?
Absolutely. First and foremost, I think just in response to everything, I think we found that, family is so important and being able to reconnect with our family and taking that time to, maybe heal certain wounded areas, forgiveness. I think so much of that was done. I'm with Hopeful Hearts Ministry. I'm the founder of Hopeful Hearts Ministry, and we aid in the long-term recovery of survivors of abuse. And so during that time, or this last, year and a half, well, I guess it's been a year, that's what I helped a lot of people through. Is just kind of that healing process for myself, as I was in Dallas and I had just, had been divorced and moved to Dallas, and I was trying to like start this whole new life, and then ended up meeting somebody from where I was originally from. And so when COVID happened, it was kind of like, or, shut down, we'll come back I went back to where I came from here in Kingwood and Houston, because my boys were coming back from college. There was no need for them to be there. So um, now I'm staying. I'm here in Kingwood, and then I got married December 19th. And because COVID kind of fast forwarded our relationship, if you will, and when you know you have something good, then why wait, I guess. I'm very, very happy. But I agree with what Lon was saying also. This is a time not to just sit around. I mean, I think we all probably can say there was a few at least weeks where we were like, just what do we do? I don't know where to go. I don't know what the next step is. For myself, having a nonprofit, every single one of my events was canceled, and we're fully donor funded. So this was a huge prayer time for me. So what I ended up doing was I fast forwarded on writing, the book that I was writing, and within this time of the year, I went ahead and got it published. It's my third book, and got it out. And so in this month, April, well, not this month, but for April, which is Sexual Assault Awareness and Child Abuse Prevention Month, we're doing a big PR push and hopefully helping Hopeful Hearts with that. I managed to keep up with our donors and to be able to keep us going, but I had to get another job. But that in itself has been such a great, just a great gift to me, because I'm still doing something within ministry, but I'm a publisher of a niche magazine called Kingwood Catholic. And I'm also doing another one close by. And then I'm going to be managing all the publishers in all of Texas. So you might actually see me in Dallas again. So if y'all know of anybody that wants to be able to be their own boss, send them my way, especially if they're Catholic. You don't have to be, but it's a good positive for that one. But so a lot of things have happened to me in this last year because I chose not to allow it to get me down. Right. And I think that's with anything in life. We're going to have these hard moments. We're going to have something, devastating happen within our family, or, somebody close to us we're going to lose. I know that I lost a few people that I love in this last year, and that's hard. And we have to allow ourselves to go through that grieving process. When things change, you have to allow that to happen. But you can't sit in it. You can't sit in it. You have to keep moving forward, and in the time that you can, right? And so God works in that, and in that brings you to where you're always meant to be. Like, we're all given a purpose. We're all given these gifts and talents. Don't sit on them. Don't let them become stagnant. Keep using them, regardless if there's a pandemic or not, right? And keep yourself healthy doing it, but there's always something for you to do, and to keep that positive light.
Well, that's beautiful, Shannon. And if you haven't heard Shannon's episode, number one is she had the benefit or challenge of being my last in studio guest on the podcast, and I can tell you, I started listening to my podcast in reverse, because then by the time I got to episode 3, 2, and 1, I wasn't so discouraged because, we all get better. It's a journey, right? And if you haven't heard Shannon's story, anybody that is really having a struggle with moving forward, whether it's with things that happen in your life, whether it's a hurricane or abuse or any number of things. If any of those things are on your plate and you're having trouble moving forward, listen to Shannon's episode. And one of the things we're going to talk about in the next season is I'm going to a little bit with the journey of the pod. One of the reasons why I'm doing this is to check in, but also we may drill down a little bit on specific topics in season 2 on warrior versus zombies. So anyway, I'm going to keep moving. Who other podcast warriors that have our time? Reinhard, you want to go ahead? So that I just want to be respectful, and I don't want to miss the opportunity to hear from each of you. Reinhard, go ahead and share with us.
Yeah, hi everybody. Great to see you, and thank you very much for having me on here. I want to just comment Shannon for her story. I really like that. And it's somewhat similar, or it reminds me of what she was talking about, like for people to who've been traumatized, to help them out. What was very heartwarming to me is, as David knows, I published a book called Letting Go Saved My Life. And I was just contacted by a lady via Facebook a couple of weeks ago. And she said, I've had a very abusive childhood. I've had a very abusive first marriage. And she'd been traumatized. She'd been in therapy for several years. And she said, after reading your book, I've finally been able to let go. And so that was really, really rewarding for me, because that's why I wrote the book, to hopefully have those kinds of impacts. It's based on a personal life and death story that I'll talk more about in my podcast. One of the most important lessons for me was I was reading the book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. And he talked about several concentration camps that he had to go to. He was a psychiatrist from Vienna, a Jewish psychiatrist who was in different concentration camps, lost most of his family in concentration camps. And he said to the people that he was working with while he was in the concentration camp, and what he said to himself, it is more important, or it really matters what life expects from us, not so much what we expect from life. And so my focus has been throughout this whole thing is, how do I need to show up in the world? What can I do? It's not what happens to me, it's how I respond to it. And do I respond in a way that's helping other people and that's pleasing to my creator? That is, I'm trying to make that my focus. What I'm also very grateful for is the many opportunities to connect with people with which we would not have had the chance if it weren't for COVID, really. I don't think, David, we would have ever met. But you look for all kinds of online platforms and means to connect with people. And so just this morning, I talked for almost an hour with somebody in France who I had connected with, somebody who grew up in Paraguay. His name was Jorge Liebel, a Spanish first name, a German last name. And it was just a fantastic encounter. We would have never met or we probably would not have met if it were not for this. So I'm really grateful for that. Several years ago, when we moved to Ohio, we were looking for a house about half the size of the house we ended up buying. We never thought, why is God giving us this big house for about the same price as other houses for half the price? And now we know, because we've not really had to feel the cabin fever that a lot of people felt by being sort of, caged in or locked in. So we're very grateful for that, to have space to, move around and not to feel so claustrophobic. What I'm also very grateful for is just opportunities to connect with people and to serve. I've been invited by a couple of Rotary clubs to speak to them about mindset. I'm a certified high performance coach, and mindset is a big one for me. And so I've been able to give them some talks about how to have a good mindset during these very challenging times. And what shall I say moving forward? Just continue to focus on serving and trying to put myself out there. I'm mentoring a high school kid right now. They have such a high demand now for mentors for high school kids, because all these lockdowns have dramatically impacted the mental health of a lot of the kids. So whenever anybody has a chance to help somebody maintain their mental health during this time, especially our kids, go for it and do it. That makes all the difference in the world. So yeah, I think that's it. That's just looking forward. Yeah.
Thanks, Reinhard. Yeah, that's again, I'm blown away already. You guys are really the things that you're moving forward with, the things you're doing. I had no expectation of anything less, but it's really powerful for me to hear how you guys are moving forward. And thank you, Reinhard, for sharing all the way from Cleveland, Ohio. And I think we met via Be Connected, right? Isn't that how we? Yeah.
That's right.
So, just as a little promo of that. Actually, this group, this RP Networkers, is an association within Be Connected, and as members of the group, we're starting to get ramped up on that. But it's a journey. I mean, it's but it's very exciting, and that's part of what I think an output of this whole pandemic, right? One of the things, Carl Flowers couldn't make it. He's our historian. And one of the things he said on his podcast that I want to share is that if you listen to his podcast, it's brilliant. And as all of you guys are, not necessarily me, but all of you guys are in the podcast, is that he said that when things like this happen in history, and he's talking about not just the last zombie apocalypse, but whether it's a Spanish flu or world wars or whatever else, when these things happen, it accelerates things that are already in process. What we're seeing is things that probably would have happened maybe over time, those trends accelerated into more of a step function. So anyway, thank you, Reinhard, for sharing. Who would like to jump in next? I want to make sure, as I said, Scott,
Robert,
go ahead.
David, can I say just one more thing? I forgot to mention that totally. I don't know whether we had this before or after, but my wife and I did get COVID. And so thankful. That's one other thing I'm really thankful for, that we survived it very unharmed. Just a few days with a little bit of a sickness, but nothing major at all. So we're very grateful
awesome.
for that. Yeah.
All right. Okay, Scott, you wanna weigh in, brother?
Absolutely. Thanks, David. And thanks for the opportunity with all this. What's the most important lesson I learned through the year? God's plan and timing is perfect. We can't necessarily, nobody would have wished for what happened all last year in the pandemic and everything that's going on, but it has changed so much for so many. And, a big part of it is how have you taken a look at it? Is it the sky is falling, or the sky is, delivering opportunities for us? And we were very fortunate that we actually had started building an online community prior to the pandemic that, as it's come to turn out, was exactly what was needed during the pandemic, which is why in literally less than a year, we're in 43 countries already. I was talking to the United Kingdom this morning. I was talking to Dublin last night. I was working with so many different people on the connection side. So what's the most important lesson out of that? Well, God gave us this opportunity to, it's funny, I remember early somebody going, so are you more efficient or less efficient these days? I said, oh my God, I'm so much more efficient. Why is that? Well, I don't get in a car, get stuck on LBJ, going to a networking meeting to not meet the person who said they were going to be there. Now I'm call after call after call after call. I'm spread around the world, sharing with people, and really the understanding, as Lon said so eloquently early, it becomes about helping people. We're just doing it in a different way, different fashion. Zoom, I mean, who could have thought that Zoom would have had 10 million users in December prior to the pandemic and 500 million in May? I mean, dang, nobody gave me that stock tip. But the point is that again, as much as there were some very serious situations for everybody to take care of, it also became a time of great opportunity. It just was dependent upon whether you took it and looked at it that way. There are so many different things that we do differently now, will do differently for the rest of our lives. Business will never be done the same way again. And if you haven't realized that, you probably should start, because it's never going to return to the way it used to be. That doesn't necessarily mean it's good or bad. It just is. And so those are the opportunities. What am I grateful for? I'm standing, I'm alive. My 89-year-old in-laws made it through the year healthy. My daughter, who had COVID significantly, and my wife both came through. My wife still has some um, she's got a little bit of the long-term thing going. I actually believe that I had it as well. Fortunately, I was a minor case of it. If I did, I've never been checked, but I've got some of the symptoms and different things, or had them along the way. What am I grateful for? My wife, my kids are healthy and happy, and we've made it through, and so have so many friends. What are you doing differently to seize the day? Every day is a blessing. Um, this actually may sound a little corny, um, but I start every morning listening to Lovely Day by Bill Withers. Just awesome. You know, it just sets a different way in place. And I just had another birthday, so I became more mature again. And it's amazing as we become more mature. That's code word for older. You know, we tend to find what's really important in life. And I can tell you that the connections that I've made through the last year, the business opportunities that are flying, I mean, because of this worldwide global community that we've created, I mean, there's probably 6 major projects that I'm involved in right now that didn't exist a year ago. And you sit there and say, well, wait a second, how is that possible? Well, it's possible because those with the proper attitude and how can I be of service to you? It's amazing if you start conversations with how can I be of service to you, people will tell you. And if you have the connections to be able to lead them through, it's amazing what will happen. I've got a friend, very fortunate that his net worth starts with a B. And I had 2 different friends looking for funding on projects. And I hadn't talked to him in a year because of the pandemic. But I reached out to him and I said, I've got a couple different people that I think you'd like to know. And, you know, if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, great. And they now have projects going on that will dramatically change. One is a state. One is the way we look at the development of tech companies. Absolutely amazing opportunities that showed up because the conversation started with, how can I be of service? So again, my encouragement to everybody would be, get in that servant leadership role. Those of us here in Dallas had the influence of Zig Ziglar, and still to this day, you can have everything in life you want when you help enough other people get what they want. David, thank you for doing the podcast. Appreciate being a guest and all the different things we do outside of this.
Thank you, Scott, and I really appreciate your sharing there. And all I can tell you is, I wish you wouldn't get emotional because it's hard for me to get emotional. But every time we get on a call, I think that comes from a heart of gratitude, and I never take anything for granted. Everybody in the network knows that I consider everybody's participation, whether you're a podcast guest today or a person in my network, as a priceless gift. There's no way I can repay you other than sharing it with you. And so the fact that you always come to the party with a heart of gratitude, and I'm grateful for you to introducing me to Be Connected, and some of these people on this call or on the Zoom right now, I wouldn't have met, as Reinhard pointed out, we wouldn't have met had it not been for that introduction. So
quickly, I just wanted to add, there's always an over and under of when I might get emotional in one of my talks. So depends on who had what. Somebody's a winner right now.
All right, Scott. Okay, who would like to go? Which one of the podcast warriors would like to jump in next? Just open your mic and I will call on you. Ricky Jean, go ahead.
Well, I think we're talking about lessons learned from last year and the things we're grateful for. Well, things I'm grateful for, I'm going to start with that first. added two grandchildren to our list that were born during the pandemic, and they were healthy, and my both daughters were healthy, and we decided from the very beginning that we wouldn't isolate from family, even though we lived in different parts of the country. We got together for Thanksgiving, got together for Christmas. We decided that life was too short to stay away from each other. And in fact, my one daughter that lives the furthest away came in and stayed a couple of weeks with us, and with three of the grandchildren. So I'm really thankful that as a family we decided not to do that and decided not to isolate. And it was a blessing. And of course, having those two other grandchildren born during this time, that was a blessing too. The lessons learned, I've been a entrepreneur of different flavors through the years. And I finally realized in about 2010 that I was really just feeding the music animal that I've always been, and all of these. I needed to really concentrate on music, and I talked to people who had been in the business and got out because the golden age of music was over, and nobody was signing big songwriters, weren't signing $1 million checks for big hits that were being recorded. The streaming music had messed up all of that, and then what was left, people were telling me, is that why you see the Rolling Stones and all these old groups still touring is that it's going out and making money at the shows. That's the only thing left. And then the pandemic hit, and I couldn't do that. And so I was thinking, well, man, this is kind of one slam to all the musicians. Talked about all the musicians in Nashville who just quit, pawned all their instruments, and got out of the business. And I'm thinking, well, I don't want to do that. I'm just going to keep writing. I can keep putting songs out there in the streaming music world. And lo and behold, through business networking, there was a place provided for me to start singing every single week. And I think I missed about maybe 2 or 3 weeks during the pandemic. And it was one of those things where you go and you sing, and they're not really going to pay you, but there's going to be tips provided. It was unbelievable through the pandemic, the graciousness of people that came, and I didn't ask, and they tipped, and it was amazing what a blessing it was financially, and a blessing that, hey, I can still roll on. And it just so happens that it's the group that Dave Roberts and Randy and I are in, and that meets on Wednesday, and now that's turned into Monday and Friday. So it's just amazing to me. The lessons I've learned is the relationships you have are going to really count when times get tough. And so you better have some good relationships going. And so those are the lessons learned and the things I'm grateful for.
Well, Ricky, it's awesome, and I thank you for your contribution there. And actually, he didn't say that part of what he's doing also is helping keeping a restaurant in business as well. So by serving the way he has, he's actually bringing business and things, not only keeping himself going, but also helping a business. So again, I appreciate you, and he got to do 2 podcasts. One was the first one, which was just us sitting around talking, and then he did number 9 after he said that I actually got good enough to do him again. So anyway, Jason, I saw you opened up and Ricky jumped in there. Do you want to go ahead now?
Yeah, sure. Right when I think I have a good podcast voice, I hear Ricky Jean. And I'm like, oh man, I have a terrible podcast voice. So what silky smooth vocal cords, man. That I could listen to him all day. So anyway, what I learned this year, it's funny, since I've been on the podcast, I would say a lot of the lessons that I doled out on the podcast, as I'm no expert at all, but became even more extreme as I looked at the world around me. Because to be honest, I didn't miss a beat during, I would say the first few weeks of the pandemic, I was at risk of falling into depression. And I was like, you know what? And then I had this epiphany, and I said to myself, I'm not going to let the world dictate my change. I'm not going to let the world change me. I'm going to choose my change. That's what I learned. And I developed a whole coaching system based upon that you choose your change. No matter what happens around you, it's perspective. It's your perspective. It's your reality, and you have control over it. And I was lucky enough that one of my best friends is a pastor, and we got together and we're like, you know what, let's go full force ahead. And we developed a coaching system, and now we're coaching. We were both coaches. I'm a gymnastics coach, and he was football and baseball, pretty high level football and baseball. And we're like, you know, we can help everyday people, not just athletes. And so we decided that's our tagline, is choose your change. And we moved full force ahead. And it was crazy because I hadn't seen him in 20 years, and I was driving down my street and he was mowing his lawn. We live on the same street. We didn't even know it. And I stopped and talked to him. He came over to watch a UFC fight, and now he's my podcast co-host, and we're putting together even another podcast. We got a podcast called The Coach's Spot that's about coaching young athletes. That's just blown up. We've been really fortunate. I'm grateful for that, for sure. At the end of the day, what I'm grateful for is the change that I implemented early in my life. And when I say early, I mean 30s, because my wife wouldn't have had me if I was still the person I was at 28, 30. And I'm most grateful for that I implemented that change, and that brought her into my life. Because if I didn't have my wife standing behind me with so much confidence that she leaves me alone when I start all these projects. She has so much confidence in me. Failure is not an option. So I have this person standing behind me that failure doesn't even enter her mind, that I will fall flat on my face, pushing me forward, saying, hey, you got stuff to do today. Here you go. And then leaves me alone about it. Says, go do it. I'll see you at dinner. And I'm so grateful for that, and the family that we've built together, because we also choose that. I chose her as a partner, which ends up meaning I chose my kids to be who they are, and implementing all of that, and just not letting the world change who I am from those outside directions. And at the end of the day, that's what they are. We have to adapt, we have to build, but you can still choose who you are at the end of the day. So that's what I'm grateful for. And that's all the change that's happened in a very short time since I've done your podcast, actually. So, and thank you for doing this. This is awesome. This is such a good idea. And hearing people touch base again, because especially the people that you've had on your podcast, change is constant, because they're warriors, and warriors know that movement is life and change is movement. And we have to keep doing that. And Ricky Jane, for example, man, that's spectacular that you're attacking your love of music. And the funny thing is, two friends, they're acquaintances that I met because of the pandemic, are both artists, and they've blown up during the pandemic. Everybody's industry dead, and it's not. They're blowing up. They're independent artists, and they're doing really, really well because of they adapted. And they said, the world's not going to dictate who I am. And Ricky, you did that. You said, I'm not going to let people take away, or let the world take away, my greatest thing, which is your music ability and your talent, which I have zero of. I'm lucky enough, I did get the George Clooney disease, which means every day I wake up, I'm a little bit better looking as I get older. So every day I run to the mirror to see how much better looking I am. So I am fortunate to have that disease. But other than that, you know, I wasn't blessed with much more besides my wife and this unbelievably weird talent for ignoring the odds. Just saying, I don't care what the odds are. Let's go do it. And then people stand back and go, well, you're just lucky. No, that's not it. It's because I went after it. So thank you again, David. I really appreciate you having us on.
That was awesome. Sorry, I had muted myself because the it was a little unstable. But thank you for your gracious in acknowledgement here, and I appreciate that. All right, which other warrior would like to go next? Karen, you want to go ahead? I see you opened your mic.
I did. I'll go because I can't stay on long. I've got back-to-backs all day. But I know for sure one person on this call or on this Zoom is going to understand exactly what I mean. So I won't call them out, but I know one person for sure. What's the most important lesson you learned and or was reinforced? Not having to people is the greatest gift anyone could ever give me. Telling me to stay home and stay away from people and not have to deal with that, most amazing thing on the planet. And if I do need to connect with them, there's a video that I can do when I don't have to go anywhere, even better. The greatest lesson is not peopling is really good for me. And I have a level of life and energy that I've never had because I don't have to do that on a regular basis. So that was beautiful. And what am I most grateful for as we emerge? That I can do everything that I need to over virtual communications, and people are used to it, expecting it, and willing to actually do business via the virtual method, which means I don't ever have to go back to peopling if I don't want to. So I can wait until I actually need it and stay alive. My co-host is kind of trying to walk across the screen. So that was you know what, may as well just like let him be there. So that was and the last, I don't know, he decided that I don't get to see what the last question was. So what was the last question, Dave?
The last question is, what are you doing differently now to seize the days?
So something that I noticed during this whole thing is the amount of personal growth and space and life that I was able to get back because I no longer had an insane stressor on myself. And the reason it's a stressor, not because I'm psychopathic, but I'm a super introvert. I could wear a cape. And so for me, peopling is a massive stressor, but not having that stressor allowed my soul to grow. And I realized that doors open as soon as you're ready. A door will open. You don't have to go looking for it. The door will like fly through space and hit you in the face and then open up and say, okay, walk through, and it's clear. So now that I am clear on that and I know what it looks like, anytime something hits me, I go with it. I don't question it. I don't ask. I don't worry about the fear that comes up, because fear, your soul may be able to tell you where you should go, but it can't tell you why, because your logic is where why comes from. And your soul can't give you the why. It can just say you need to go in this direction. Even if that direction seems like your life is going to fall apart with the first step, it won't. You just don't have the experience to relate because what's over there is brand new. So now that I know and I can see it and I can do that, if something comes at me and it's a yes, I've jumped on the, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no bandwagon. And there are only two options in my life now. It's either a hell yes or it's a no. And for every hell yes, I go. I don't question it. I don't ask. I don't wonder. I don't say, well, I'm going to be broke in 2 months and be homeless. It doesn't matter. And every time I've done that, it's turned out to be way better than anything I could have come up with on my own.
Wow, that's awesome. And I definitely know what you talk about when Karen talks about peopling. We are 180 degrees out of phase as far as our social. I'm a full-on extrovert, and Karen is actually a full-on introvert. So when she says peopling, that was her usually. I can't, when I'd say, can you come to this network meeting? And she'd say, I can't do any more peopling this week. I can't come. So, so that was, and that's okay. Really, it's a beautiful thing, right? I mean, that looking forward, looking at the opportunities, everybody that's shared with us so far, have said, okay, given this, I just looked forward and said, here's how I take the next step forward. And we've already heard some amazing and incredible nuggets, if you will, that I call warrior nuggets going forward here. Randy, do you want to weigh in here, buddy? You've kind of been sitting there. Randy has the distinction, really, of being very dedicated to the podcast. I think he's listened to most all of your podcasts. So I've got about 200 downloads a week with the podcast, and Randy, I think, has been one of the people that have listened to all of them at least once, and I've given me a lot of feedback, a lot of ideas. But also, he had an amazing episode on the podcast. So, Randy, you know that you're a rule follower, so you know the questions and whatever. So, what do you want to share with us, brother?
Well, it's interesting, David. I didn't want to go first because I talk a lot, and I had plenty of time before we actually started the call to chat with people. And I have to be careful because I will take over. So I wanted to back off on that. But most important lesson that I've learned, well, I knew this, but it was reinforced that my true value is determined by how much I'm giving. And that was really reinforced when I read The Go-Giver, which is what prompted me to give that book away at the Wednesday meeting. The problem is, and it doesn't mean just financial giving. It means giving of myself in caring and support of others. And I've tried to do that with the consultancy, and even by telling people that my services are pro bono, which means free. Haven't had many takers. But I'm not complaining, because those that have, I'm really having a ball with. And I've, like I said, been helping a guy write a book, and there's a few people in the group that I'm working with, and I'm enjoying it, and I think they're enjoying it too. And the other thing is at my church, and again, it's not just how much money I put in the envelope. I mean, they asked me to be an elder this year, and I'm very involved with the pastor in coming up with a new ministry plan, because we've moved to a new location. We've taken over the old congregation that was there, and we're in an area that is underserved from a church perspective. And so there's so much opportunity to give of myself. And so that's really high up on my list. What I'm most grateful for, well, the first thing I'm really most grateful for is David and this group. Being a new guy in Texas and really not knowing a lot of people, I tried a whole bunch of different networking groups, and this one stuck. And it's not just David; it's the people. It's all the people that are on this call today, and those that aren't on the call today. It's the ability to listen to these other people and hear what they have to say. And it feeds my mind, it feeds my body, and it feeds my soul. And when I can get to the Wednesday group at the original Pancake House, it definitely feeds my body. And you'll see me more at that now that I've had both my COVID shots. So I think, those are the most important lessons. What I'm grateful for, other than grateful for this group, I'm grateful that I did not get COVID. I've received the vaccines in times to start meeting with the people I love and admire on a face-to-face basis. I was just talking to George Elwell this morning about getting together with him and Marianne for breakfast. Even during this period, even though we couldn't get up to Massachusetts to see my 2 younger children and our only 2 grandchildren, we did, when we figured out Zoom, we were able to talk to them and see them and listen to them and have them remember who Grandpa is in Texas. And that was really important to me. So that's, and then I have my number 1 son. He'll always be our number 1 son, because he was and he is. He lives in Plano and he's married. And we get to see them on a regular basis. Excuse me. In fact, we just went out with them for dinner this weekend. We try not to overdo it because they haven't had their shots. And so if I'm exposing myself to other people, I don't want to pass that along to them. But and certainly grateful for my pastor and my church. Talk to my pastor frequently, help where I can, and God has always been an important element in my life, in my career, my family, and it's become even more important. And what am I doing differently to seize the days ahead? And I think Scott's the one who used this phrase, but listening with intention. I need, and I'm trying harder to, I write notes, but it's not just what people say. Sometimes it's what they don't say. And you can see from their facial expressions, particularly on Zoom, if you're not face to face. I think people are less afraid of talking on Zoom than they may be face to face. And so you can see the body language. Like listening to Karen, I sent her a note. I would have never in a million years picked her as an introvert. That was an amazing learn today. And so I guess I need to do another one-on-one with her to get to know her even better. So what I'm doing differently is to listen more to the needs of others, both at church, my network, to see if there are places that I can offer my services or just be available, finding ways to help them. And maybe they know somebody who needs to be helped. So I got a lot of professional experience, but I also have a lot of life experience that I want to share, that not out of ego, but out of my faith. And so I think that kind of summarizes it.
That's a great summary, Randy. And here's the guy that said he didn't have a podcast content in him. So yeah, I appreciate you, Randy. Ed Trinkle, I know you've got a limited amount of time here. Would you like to open up your mic and share the answers to the 3 questions, which is basically what's your most important lesson you learned during the zombie apocalypse? Yeah, those kinds of things you want to share with us?
Appreciate you doing this, Dave. And I know a lot of us have been encouraged and blessed by kind of a lifeline that you've thrown out to a lot of people relationally and in leadership. And I appreciate all that you're doing through all your networks. And then particularly the one that I'm invested in is the Men's Breakfast Network that you do once a month on Saturdays. Probably the most important lesson, and I did prepare for this because I knew Randy would be prepared, and I did not want Randy to think I wasn't prepared, because he does need to do a podcast. He has a lot of great content in what he said. Appreciated what he said. But probably the most important thing that I think that I have learned, maybe multiple fold a little bit, flexibility. I don't know, none of us have ever been through a pandemic. So everything we've learned by experience through this, right? And in my field, I'm a pastor of a church. So I've learned to be flexible and to be patient, with different situations and families that we're working with right now. And then I think a lost art that was probably lost a couple generations before me. Dave and I went to a funeral this week for a man that passed, that served in the Korean War, was a missionary all over the world. He was an 88-year-old man. To summarize his life, I would use the word honor. And I think honor and respect are two character qualities that are not as valued as they used to be in our culture today. For instance, everybody wants to know where everybody is on all of the COVID stuff, right? And instead of just honoring and respecting how people feel about it, there's just been this it's become very divisive. And you know how you feel about it. I'm learning that I have to honor and respect you as a human being, just like I would expect that back of myself. And I think honor is a great quality. I tell my kids that we need to learn to honor up. Of course, that's honoring God. Honor down, that's personally with our family and so forth. But honor all around. Just be honorable and respectful to everybody, and you will create a great name for yourself in our culture. Thing that I'm very grateful for is our church family. I'm thankful for you, Dave. Like Randy spoke earlier about being involved in his church and an elder in his church. Dave is one of our leaders, primary leaders in our church, and he's been a great source of encouragement for that. You know, faithfulness of a lot of God's people, that we've been able to do a lot of neat ministry throughout the town. I'm thankful we haven't had to close down, except for the short 5-6 week period that was mandated. And that our, you know, not to sound super secular, but our church is still in business and we're still, you know, plowing ahead and doing good. Things I would do differently. I don't know. I know hindsight's 2020. We were all given the greatest gift in the whole world during this pandemic, and that's time, right? Because that's the most valuable thing we have. And then it seemed like we went from running super tight schedules to all of this extra time. So I think maybe the thing I would do differently is try to understand in the beginning some of the things I understand now about the pandemic, which information was limited. But to be specific, I probably would have started a mask only early service. And then the way that, you know, we did the state standard as for our church, but I think I would have added a mask only for those who just wanted to be around and wear masks all the time. And I think that would have been a good way for us to honor and respect. We've been very careful to stay with the state standard, but, you know, not everybody agreed with that. So, you know, I would want to learn how to respect and honor better myself to others as we continue to move forward with this. So anyway, thanks, Dave, for what you're doing in so many people's lives. You're an encouragement and a blessing to all of us.
Well, thank you for your kind words there, Ed, and I appreciate you as well. And I just want to say that we've learned some things that are very similar in this pandemic, or the zombie apocalypse, as I say, because we've learned to honor people's comfort in a different way. We had to shut our regular in-person meetings down. It wasn't church, but we had to shut it down. And then we still do a hybrid meeting on Wednesdays because we don't want anybody to not be socially connected. Scott Schilling, who I think he's dropped off, but he said something on his podcast that I thought was extremely powerful to early on, and I know I shared it with you, Ed, was that it's not being socially distanced that we're trying to do. That's a bad word, a bad way of looking at it. We need to be physically distanced and stay socially connected.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful message that I think you've embraced in the ministry going forward. It's a learning as we move forward in this, is that some people are very comfortable with the virtual environment. Some people are uncomfortable still with the virtual. I have people that have yet to reconnect because they only want to do it in person. And we have people that may be virtual all the time for many different reasons. And I think the most important thing that I've learned in running this group and also being part of your ministry and having the opportunity is that I've had is that being honoring and respecting people where they're at and serving them where they're at is the most important thing as we move forward, or one of the most important things. So I appreciate that. Well, I'm going to move to Mark Weber. If you've been sitting there nice and quiet, and another one of my introverted friends, but also a great podcast guest. It's funny because I say that, and then Randy may be surprised at that one too. But again, Mark was the original. He was there on the ground when I showed up at Richardson Plano Networkers at the time, and then ultimately took that. But so as a prime networker, you'd think, oh yeah, he must be an extrovert. No, he's adapted. He's an old guy like me, and he's adapted and learned how to do what he needed to do to build his technology business. So Mark, why don't you answer the questions for us today?
Okay. I wrote down a few and then I thought of another one at the end, but the most important lessons that were reinforced was, I had three that came to mind quickly. Live within your means. We had to kind of get everything under control. Have an emergency fund. That's always one of those things I was preached at. And stay calm during an emergency. Take time to think. That's not the time to panic. And the other thing, and Ed would appreciate this, is the walls came down. We have people participating now that aren't even physically near us. They're coming from all over. And we don't have to restrain ourselves to physical distance, being able to get to meetings or anything like that. And I think virtual is going to be more and more of the standard for ongoing. I can see it. We're going to have hybrid meetings for a lot of things. So that's one nice thing that came out of this for us to all learn. The most grateful thing was that my family they came through it well. There wasn't any fatalities in our family. Everybody survived financially, and one had to step away from a full-time job in order to do so because she was teaching and she didn't feel safe with what they were recommending. And we were all willing to follow the medical advice and to stay safe. My biggest thing that I was going to talk about was the thing that changed the most for me in the past year, and you kind of see it on my shirt, is one of the people that normally comes to this meeting. His name's Jarrell Sterling. He also does what I do. We're both tech support people. And I can't tell which one of us is more introverted. We're kind of quiet, but we hit it off well. And he was able to meet the need to go out more, help me as a backup person before COVID when we met, and then during COVID. And then towards the end of last year, I said, we ought to just merge these two companies, just because I'm 64 now and trying to transition towards retirement. And he's not as old as I am. So it's easier to just move my customers under his and continue to grow. And even before this meeting, we had a meeting talking about what else can we do or how are we going to price things. And he's got some good ideas and some current ideas that we need to start offering our customers and so forth. So just it helps to have somebody you can rely on as a backup and somebody that's with new ideas and someone to pass to work to when you need to take a vacation. So that was kind of the nice thing that happened this year, is we had a chance to work together remotely and be each other's backup during that time. And then that's facilitated me to transition a little more towards my goal of someday getting towards retirement. It's not an on-off switch with me. It's more of a slide switch.
Yeah. Well, Mark, that's actually, again, I'll work with you like I work with Randy, but retirement is not doing nothing, as I say all the time. It's doing what you want, with who you want, where you want, when you want. It's not doing, if you give up on fulfilling what it is that your passion, your life purpose, just count the years. You got about a 6-year lifespan on average. So one of the things that I've learned is even the zombie apocalypse is no excuse for sitting around and just lamenting. As those of part of RP Networkers know, we shut down all of our meetings for 1 week. That was about March 24th, 1 year ago. 1 week we shut down, and then we figured out how to migrate to Zoom and did it and kept staying. So I'm very thankful not only that we picked that tech, speaking to a tech guy, and made that decision. It was, it was just looked at what was best and went forward with it and had some opportunity to have an enterprise account and move forward. But I'm also thankful for everybody, because it's a team sport, right? Everybody that came along on the journey, because we're still, this group, this network still grows almost one person a day as far as joining the meetup group, even through the zombie apocalypse. So it's a beautiful thing, and I've learned that keeping people and keeping connected. That's why this Friday session, we started calling it, or I started labeling it, Stay Connected and Thrive, is because we're always going to do Friday, at least always. I shouldn't say always or never. I always tell people not to do that. But the intention would be for this Friday session to continue to be via Zoom and be virtual, so that we have the opportunity for educational segment to bring in people from all over the planet. And now that I'm connecting people with Be Connected and stuff, we literally can bring people from all over the planet to educate people in the group, which is a powerful thing. We don't have to wait for them to fly into Dallas before they can come in the room, right? So anyway, so that's a learning moving forward. If you want to look at what I'm doing and going forward and learning and building communities, that being able, even though I'm a full-on introvert, full-on extrovert and not introverted like Karen and you, Mark, and we can do this on the Zoom too. We can do this in this way, and it's still not as good. I can't hug Jennifer, like I could if we were in a room, but or Randy. I can hug you too, Randy. So,
I miss hugs too, but I'm not hugging anybody till I get my shots.
Yes, I know.
Trying to find a way to get the shot is like a full-time job. So
yeah, I hear you. Well, hopefully they've opened it up. So anyway, well, I appreciate you, Mark. I appreciate all the warriors. Who else? I'm going to open it up. I think we've covered all the podcast warriors. Mako, I'd like for you to weigh in. You are Mako, the Mako Amoyo, our token Filipino and printer, is probably one of the most faithful learners that I've encountered in his journey. He is always participating in these Friday sessions. I know he consumes a lot of information. And could you answer those 3 questions for me, Mako?
Sure. I think the big lesson for me during this whole, time period has been staying to my commitment to continuous improvement. That's one of my core values. No matter how old I get, I always come to these sessions, and to everybody I meet with an open mind. I just get a kick out of hanging out with young people, because I learned so much from them, and I still learn stuff from old dogs like Randy and me and Mark and stuff that I consider, the mature crowd. But I just love hanging around my niece and nephews and the other young people and some of my networking groups. Like I still continue to learn a lot from them. And that's one of the things I'm most grateful for, is getting to run into those people each and every day. One of the big turning points for me in my life was getting a new replacement hip back in July. To that point, I'd considered myself, I've turned into my dad. I'm just used to the pain. For 2 years, I have gotten used to the pain and just hobbling around. And then after I got that new hip, I just got a whole new level of energy. I do a lot more stuff now, and I'm just anxious to get out and about of the house and meet new people and do stuff. And I've changed my habits too. That's another lesson I've learned. These are just little things, but some of these little things
have inspired me to get me off my rear end every morning. I take a cold plunge shower every day. I do 50 push-ups every day, say my prayers, and I make up my bed every single morning, even to the point where when my wife and I travel, we even make up the bed before we get out of the hotel. So I'm getting into that habit of doing that kind of stuff, and it makes the starting out the day a lot more fun. And the one big lesson I've learned is, man, I know my time on earth is it forever. So I try not to waste time anymore. I used to find myself sitting on the couch on weekends watching Netflix, yada yada yada. But I don't do that anymore. I get up out and about, whether it's cooking in the kitchen, taking my wife out for a walk or whatever. I'm totally against time wasting nowadays. And one little additional habit I try to do on a regular basis, I'm starting to journal more, where I take about 5-10 minutes and recap my day or week's successes on paper. And it not only helps me at the end of the day, but if I get a down period, I can go back and read some of the past successes, and it gets me pumped back up. I use it as an inspiration, and then I see it happening all around me. When I first used to go to the Wednesdays meetings, I would see Jennifer in there with their, huddled down with their head down. But now I consider her a yapper. She's always jumping in the conversation, and she's come out of her cocoon and everything. And I've had a chance to reconnect with old friends like Patricia Ann Cole I've known for many years, and things like that. So life has been nothing but a big blessing for me.
Awesome, Mako. Well, I knew I could count on you to share some warrior nuggets there. And again, just because somebody hasn't been on the podcast, one of the things I want to say, if you notice when I was talking about lessons from the zombie apocalypse, I said 31 podcast episodes, 48 warrior training. So all these Fridays that we've learned some things. But even more importantly, sometimes than that, is the one-to-one interactions that we have that we connect with people. Mako mentioned something that changed his life, which was the hip replacement. And Mako actually changed my life because he referred me to his doctor. And I lived with the same level of pain. And if you've lived with a level of pain for a long period of time, physical pain, you don't realize how much it takes out of you emotionally as well as mentally, your ability to process. Your tank is only half available. And then when that goes away, it is changing. The other thing, Ronit Moore was not able to join us, but one of the things that I learned that if you listen to her podcast, is how to protect myself from this zombie apocalypse and zombie virus and the ones that are coming in the future, is be on a wellness journey every day, because your immune system, we're a miraculous creation, and it can recover from many things. Reinhard mentioned he had the COVID. I had the COVID. To me, it was basically, I've had common cold that were worse. So I feel very blessed with that. Well, I appreciate all the warriors that have joined us here today, and the ones that have come and gone. I'm getting this on tape recording, so thank you, each and every one of you. For those who were unable